On March the 22nd. This will be their final game until they take on Chile in February. The two sides are out. Let's enjoy the national anthems.
Namna hiyo, ikiwa timu zote hizi zikiimba nyimbo zao za taifa, ni mchezo kabisa wa wao. Wakati tukingoja mchezo wenyewe kati ya Egypt na Kenya ambao leo hii ina saa moja hapo jioni. Hawa ni wa Egypt waimba wimbo wao wa taifa.
Well, it's far from full in Abu Dhabi, but the Egyptian supporters, as they always do, making plenty of noise here. Chance once again to test themselves against the team considered Africa's finest, Ivory Coast. The only problem is that this generation have been unable to prove it. They may be a bit ring rusty. It's Ivory Coast's first match for 2 months. Their last game was a 3-0 victory away to Austria in Linz on November the 14th. But of course, most of their players here in the side that's been selected are first-team regulars in a number of Europe's major leagues. The captain's armband in the absence of Didier Drogba from the starting 11 goes to Didier Zakura, a centurion in terms of caps for the Ivory Coast. This is his 107th for the 32-year-old former Tottenham Hotspur midfielder. Well, Egypt were on a good run. They were 14 games unbeaten between February 2012 and June, winning 12 of that 14, a run that was remarkably ended by the Central African Republic when they won by 3-2 in the qualifying first leg. One or two familiar names there for viewers of past Africa Cup of Nations, the likes of Mohamed Abu Trika, for example, an experienced campaigner for Egypt in what is a fairly young squad selected by Bob Bradley. And he'll be keen that they improve on Thursday's performance when they were well beaten by Ghana. Kolo Touré, the man in the centre of that almost huddle for Ivory Coast. And there is the 11, probably not too far away from the 11 that will start the competition. Of course, a lot will depend on the recovery of Yaya Touré, and Didier Drogba is likely to regain the captain's armband and the striking role from the giant that is Lassina Traoré, 6'8", the Anji Mahashkala striker. Sabri Lamouchi is the latest coach charged with finally guiding this team to the promised land of the Africa Cup of Nations trophy.
Huu ni mchezo wa awali, tunangoja saa moja kamili ili mchezo uweze kuanza kati ya Egypt na Kenya.
So Abu Dhabi is the setting then. It's Ivory Coast versus Egypt. A last chance for the Elephants to fine-tune before opening up their Africa Cup of Nations tournament next Tuesday when they take on Togo in Rustenburg. Wayne Boyce here to take you through the action. Pleased to say joining me is Danny Mills. And Danny, just the one game to warm up for such a massive tournament, but given the ages of some of these Ivory Coast players, it's felt this year really does have to be it for the Elephants.
Yeah, they've got an awful lot of experience, so close in the past, obviously, to winning it. And a bit like we've seen with England in the past, you know, this has been labelled as the golden generation. Really now they need to produce the goods. And I think one game, of course, you know, this for most of these players that play in Europe, a lot of them play in the Premier League, it comes at a bad time of the season. You can't really fit in too many warm-up games, and that's probably the reason for just the one.
So we are underway. Egypt in the familiar red shirts. Ivory Coast changed in all green. They are on a remarkable unbeaten run. They've not lost a game in 90 minutes or extra time since the 17th of November 2010, a 3-1 defeat against Poland. They went the entirety of 2011 and 2012 unbeaten. The only loss, which of course rankles, was the penalty shootout defeat to Zambia in the 2012 Africa Cup of Nations final.
Yeah, mchezo nao umeanza hivyo.
Only possession then for Egypt.
Egypt wako na mpira.
Fati. Fati with the throw. Back again to, well, Goma. Goma wearing the captain's armband, the only survivor from the 11 that started against Ghana. Here's Ashore. They like to keep the ball for long periods, Egypt. It's a style of play that has brought them so much success on the continental stage. They failed to qualify for the last Cup of Nations and this one as well. They've not lost a Nations Cup game since 2004 at the finals itself. They're currently on a record of 19 unbeaten at the Cup of Nations. And of course they won't be able to defend. Solbamba to Zakora. Toure. Up towards Lassina Traore. Towers above everybody out there. Particularly his marker there, Rami Rabia.
Ivory Coast just struggling to get the ball at the moment, allowing Egypt to play. Obviously, a lot of these teams, you know, in their home countries, used to playing in very hot atmospheres, very hot temperatures. You know, the game is of a slower pace, but at the moment, Ivory Coast just sitting back a little bit too much. Maybe just a little bit overconfident that maybe when they get the ball, they can go and score at.
Here's Jovinho. Looking forward, Traore. Immediately being pressured by Goma. Traore did well to get the ball in at all from that tight area. Now Mozen for Egypt. A bit isolated initially, looking to take on Kolo Toure. Lively start, Danny, from Egypt.
Yeah, I'm not sure how match fit Kolo Toure is. Hasn't had an awful lot of game time at Manchester City. To me, looks a little bit heavy, a little bit lethargic, and just hesitated in both those challenges. And I think, you know, that's an opportunity for Egypt. Maybe single him out. You know, if they can isolate him one-on-one, will cause them problems.
Tiote has been dispossessed. Is Solbamba. Yeah, just 8 appearances in the Premier League this season for Kolo Toure. Here is Zakora. Toure. Frustratingly for him, of course, with Vincent Kompany's sending off, he may have got a shot over the next 3 games, but of course now he's heading off to South Africa. Here's Zakora. Eboué. Back from Gradle. Ivory Coast finally getting a touch of the ball, but that was out of play, and it's a throw for Egypt.
A lot of experience in this Ivory Coast side. You know, players have played in the competition before, you know, play across Europe. Amongst them, you know, have won numerous trophies. And you just feel, I think, the only thing that could go against them, you know, is that overconfidence, is that complacency factor. They possibly think they've just got to turn up and win the game.
There's Jioni. Almost beat himself there, made it easy for Wael Goma. Well, North African teams have been the bane of Ivory Coast in previous Nations Cup, and they faced two of them in Group D. Both Tunisia and Algeria will represent tough challenges for Ivory Coast.
Yeah, Jioni unlucky there. Standing foot, just clipped, just pulled away from him, took him off balance. I think the referee got that one wrong, should have been a free kick.
It's Traoré. TNA to Zakura. Good pressure from Egypt though, forcing the ball back to Bamba. Now Touré. Gradle to Tiote. Zakura. TNA. It's a lovely left foot. It's too high for Traoré, but the header from Gradle. It's always going to be difficult to get any power into it, and it was comfortable for El Hadari.
Yeah, the cross was just behind him. I think it was really aiming for Traoré, trying to use his height advantage. But interesting so far. Obviously, Bob Bradley's influence on the Egyptian side, very organised, quite rigid in their formation. Not really what we've come to expect from African teams at all. Obviously, I've seen the USA play several times over the last few years under Bob Bradley, and that's what they were. They were organised, you know, they were efficient, and obviously he's trying to get that base, if you like, with the Egyptians.
A talented player, Lassina Traoré. He's been linked to one or two Premier League clubs. Played most of his club football in Russia for Kuban and now Anji Mahashkala. Liverpool fans will remember him from the Europa League clash. Here's Mozen. It's a goal kick for Ivory Coast.
Good strength and pace from Bamba. Just gets his body in between man and ball, strength, just sees it out of play. I think, you know, his partnership with Kolo Touré is going to be absolutely vital. They've got to complement each other. Kolo Touré has all the experience. Bamba has, you know, probably the pace and the power that, you know, he may be going to have to get him out of trouble at times.
Well, it was the first choice partnership for last year's Nations Cup. Those two started the final against Zambia together. In fact, 7 of the starting 11 here started the 0-0 draw with Zambia. So not too much chopping and changing in the Ivory Coast squad in general from last year. It's Ashore. Out towards Fatty this time. TNA wins the header. Does have something of a wand of a left foot, Saka TNA, if he is allowed to get forward. This is neat play by Egypt though. Trying to break through here. TNA getting back, and finally it's cleared away by Kolo Touré, but good play by Omar Gaba.
It's a good run from Gaba. Just trying to get the first tackle from Bamba came in, wasn't strong enough, allowed him to go on, and then it's almost like he got to the edge of the box and just ran out of ideas. Bob Bradley will be a little bit disappointed. Once he got in a good position, he then wasn't quite sure what to do. Didn't know whether to shoot, go alone, or whether to cross the ball, and in the end that allowed the Ivory Coast to get back and get the tackles in.
Zakura. Gradle helps it on to Tiote. Gradle continued the run. Tiote again. Sol Bamba. This is Touré. The referee waving play on, and this is Gaba again. And it is a free kick to Egypt this time. And a yellow card too for Max Gradle. Well, they're complaining about the first challenge, the Ivory Coast players.
I'm not sure he's hurt quite that badly. Didn't look overly serious. Max Grader, got to be careful. Seen him at Leeds several times. Occasionally in the past has one or two issues with his temperament, has got involved in things. I'm not quite sure what Max Grader has been booked for there. I think if anything it's the foul from Zakora. Max Grader just coming across the back of him. Not an awful lot he can do, and possibly the referee's got that wrong. If he's going to book anybody, it should have been Zakora.
I mean, maybe from the referee's angle, behind Max Grader, he thinks that it was Grader that caught it, but you're absolutely right, it was Zakora, wasn't it, who made contact. And no wonder he was upset, Grader. First yellow card of the game, though. Goes to the Sanetian winger.
I think difficult for both of these teams. Not many fans in the stadium, no real atmosphere, and at the moment Ivory Coast just look a little bit rusty.
That's easy for Barry in the Ivory Coast goal. Well, Egypt are one of the main reasons why this generation has yet to become African champions. Beat them in the 2006 final on penalties. They then knocked out Ivory Coast again in the semi-finals, 2008. Pressing once more here, Moja. And then it was Algeria's turn in 2010 to beat Ivory Coast in the quarter-final. So these North African teams who have generally ended the Ivory Coast run in the Cup of Nations until Zambia, of course, ripped up the form book and held on to win the final last year. There's Kolo Toure. It's almost tougher, isn't it, when everybody expects you to win it every year?
Well, just looking at that, I think, you know, Egypt seem to be taking this game a little bit more seriously. You know, they're playing at a higher tempo, they're trying to get the ball back. For the Ivory Coast, it's a difficult one. All the pressure is on them. Basically, you know, there's probably 9 of those players that will possibly start in the opening game. And, you know, they don't want to get injured. They don't want to pick up any knocks, anything like that. You know, and it's tough. They're not going through the motion. Better than that, but it's almost like a derby game where the underdogs in Egypt have nothing to lose, and if they go out and they win this game, it'll be a huge day for them.
There's Jioni. It's broken down all too easily again. Abu Trika helping it on for Egypt. Back again by Aboué. Zakora. Now Kolo Toure. It's a bit of a rivalry that's built up over the last few years between Egypt and Ivory Coast, where one team seems to achieve what the other one wants. Ivory Coast qualifying for the World Cup in 2006 and 2010. Egypt desperate to get back to the World Cup, haven't qualified since 1990, yet since then have won the African Nations Cup 4 times, while Ivory Coast have failed to be successful in the continental showpiece. Here's Moja. Holy grail for Egypt is very much World Cup qualification. Jioni's header. Goma. Zakora there exchanging views with Kabla. Neither goalkeeper troubled yet, approaching the 15th minute.
Maybe just make the manager think of 1 or 2 possibilities. You know, if Drogba isn't 100% fit, put himself in the frame.
He's got a good scoring record, 9 goals in 16 Russian League matches this season for Anji. It's not just his aerial presence as well, he's got a neat touch and decent on the ground. It's Ghetto. Now Goma. And Fati. To Kabla. Chance here maybe for Egypt. Kolo Touré across though, just to get there ahead of Gedo. Egypt win it back again. Heading towards Gedo. Picked up by El Said. And it's just too high. Well over, in fact, in the end.
Just got the ball caught under his feet. Good movement, sharp from Egypt. They certainly look the hungrier team. Just there, the ball's just under his feet. He's trying to lean back to get a little bit of power. Unfortunately, can't quite get over the ball high and wide. But so far, been quite impressed with the Egyptian team. They do, they certainly look hungrier, they look sharp, they look organised. Ivory Coast really yet to get going and haven't offered anything going forward.
It's Gradle. Foul by Fatty. In his first Africa Cup of Nations last year, Max Gradle. John Sanatian from Leeds, as Danny said. Yeah, decent record at Leeds, 25 goals in 77 appearances, not bad from a wide player.
Yeah, I think that they were sad to see him go. It went relatively cheaply in the end, getting towards the end of his contract. I think Leeds fans wanted him to stay. He did have one or two temperamental issues at times, but you know, undoubtedly is a threat with his pace.
Oh, Kanawi's crossing, and Egypt have taken the lead through Abu Trika. Wonderful ball by Kanawi, the left back, and the experienced campaigner Abu Trika pops up with the header, and Egypt lead after 19 minutes.
Well, probably what the Egyptians deserve, in all honesty. They've been sharper, they've been first to the ball, they've been on the front foot. It's a good ball out wide, and just there, you know, there's no real hurry whatsoever from Aboué to get near that cross. It doesn't put the player under any pressure. The cross comes into the box far too easily, and I think it's Kolo Touré is just on his heels. Trigger gets across him, and a good header. Nothing the keeper can do about it. One of those little flicks that just loops into the far corner, but nothing more, I think, than the Ivory Coast deserve. They've been sloppy early on, you know, and they certainly haven't looked sharp. And fair play to Egypt. They've come here to win, to put on a performance, and they're doing that.
And the traditional celebration from Essam El Hadari that we were so used to seeing in the Africa Cup of Nations. Maybe a friendly, but it means a lot to Egypt. Any victory they can get against the likes of the Ivory Coast. In fact, when you watch Egypt play, you do wonder how they were beaten by the Central African Republic. It was quite extraordinary. Lost at home 3-2, and then failed to turn it around in the second leg that finished 1-1. Also a truncated qualifying tournament for the Cup of Nations with just a year in between tournaments, as CAF decided to move it to odd years to get it away from the World Cup. I think long-term a sensible decision. But a concerned look there from Sabri Lamouchi. Ivory Coast's long unbeaten record in jeopardy here against their old rivals from North Africa. Here's Zakora. Yet on paper, Danny, at the start of the game, Ivory Coast looked to have the stronger team out there.
Yeah, I think the Ivory Coast just look a little bit complacent at the moment. Possibly they went out with the idea, big players, big names, big reputations, but yet they haven't quite put in the work rate that goes with that. You know, really, it's been all Egypt. You know, they've been sharp, they've been passing the ball well, organisation. You know, Bob Bradley's obviously doing a real good job at the moment, and it's difficult for the Ivory Coast. If they're not careful, you know, you get into this sort of habit, it becomes very, very difficult to pick it up in the first game when the competition starts proper.
Traore certainly putting himself about again, catching Ashore. Another free kick for Egypt. Kanawi. was a great ball in from Kanawi to Abu Trika. Here's Goma. TNA's header. Now Razak. And the break is on again here now for Egypt. This is Ghetto. Stepping away from Eboe. Abu Trika, I think, thought about the shot. And Gabet. And Ivory Coast close ranks, and Gradle can bring it away. Here's Tiene. Great pace about the game. Traore, certainly not being played like a friendly. Rabia. Now Goma. Now Ashore. Of course, Ivory Coast only had to play 2 games to qualify for the Nations Cup, but it was a couple of tough games. They drew Senegal to play over 2 legs. Of course, the second leg turned into the story of the qualifiers when Ivory Coast were leading 2-0 and the Senegalese fans rioted with 15 minutes to go. The match was abandoned, but the result stood. Senegal, one of the other big names missing from this tournament, along with Egypt and Cameroon. Here's Kanawi. It's a neat touch towards Al Said. Tiote across. And that's a corner for Egypt.
I think the worry for the Ivory Coast at the moment is that they're playing like a team of individuals, where, you know, completely the opposite for the Egyptians are playing like a real team. No real superstars in that side, much more togetherness.
Deep delivery this time. Oh, Sol Bamba got a crucial touch on that while Goma was just winding up for the volley. Well, the form has been a bit hit and miss from Egypt since they went out to the Central African Republic. They drew with Oman, they beat Congo, lost to Tunisia, drew with Georgia, beat Qatar, and then lost to Ghana on Thursday. So it's kind of win one, lose one, draw one at the moment for Egypt. Well, they've certainly started this game brightly enough. It looks as though we're going to get an early change. And it's the lone striker who is coming off, Marwan Mosen, to be replaced by Al Sayed Hamdi.
I presume he's got to be injured. Didn't really walk off with much of a limb, didn't seem to be struggling too much, but surely that can't be a tactical change, you know, this early when they're doing so well.
Yeah, it'd be a bit harsh, wouldn't it, to hook him off for tactical reasons.
Especially, you know, the Egyptians have been well on top in the game. You know, the goalkeeper yet has been completely untroubled. I can't remember the Ivory Coast really getting more than 4 or 5 passes in succession together. You know, and maybe, you know, this only the one warm-up game could be the undoing of them.
It's Hamdi to Al Said. Yeah, most of the other nations have managed to get a couple of matches in. First match for 2 months for Ivory Coast, then one warm-up and then they're straight in. Togo, January the 22nd, 4 days later Tunisia, and then it's Egypt's big rivals, Algeria. All 3 matches in Rustenburg for Ivory Coast. Here's Sol Bamba. TNA. Gradle did well to keep it in play and get the cross in. There's Abu Trika, the goal scorer. It's not going to be much of a wave, is it?
Probably not even a quarter of the stand. It's going to stop, and they're going to have to wait 3 or 4 minutes until they, the pretend crowd, if you like,
Someone's going to have to tie